So good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I'm Jazz, spiritual teacher. I am delighted to be with you today. And we have a special guest. She is Cornelia Ward, and we're going to talk about indigo children, crystal children, and also the adults that are opening up to spirituality at this time, and the type of self-care that we can do. So if you find yourself just waking up or having some of those symptoms of crystal or indigo, what can you do to manage that in your everyday life and not go completely crazy with all of that energy that's coming in? So welcome, Cornelia. You also go with Connie, so that's why I'm kind of hesitating which name to go first.
Yeah, Connie's my nickname, so that's perfect. Kind of like Jazz is your nickname, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that works. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So tell us a little bit about you. So you're in Virginia.
I'm in Vermont, actually,
Vermont?
in the U.S. Yeah, another V name. And just a little bit of background. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
Okay. Well, so I help people love Mondays.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, when I say that, they kind of go, oh, what does that mean? Well, so 80% of Americans and Canadians, and apparently all over Europe, this is true too, 80% of us are going to a job each day that's just not working for us. And I think that's pretty crazy. And so what I do is I help people transition into either a career or a business that really lights them up, so they're excited to get back to work on Monday. And I primarily work with light workers like you and I, right? Light workers, people who we're really being called, I think, right now to really get out there and share our gifts and talents with the world, because the world really needs us right now. So I feel honored to be able to do this work and really honored to be a guest on your show.
Thank you. Yes, the world, there's a huge calling right now, more than ever, I think, of coming out of the spiritual closet, shining our light. And one of the challenges that we have now is that I believe we have to be the light worker. We have to be our spiritual person in everyday life. Not just like before we would go in previous lifetimes, we might go in nunneries, or we might be monks or, Buddhas on top of our mountain, not really interacting with the world, but just anchoring that light, meditating. And now we have to do that every day. And that's why it's a little bit more challenging, because doing the dishes can be an act of devotion, and vacuuming, and all our relations.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah, that's a great perspective. I like that.
Yeah. So when you talk of self-care, that's about being the light worker every day in everything that we do, and the job that we have, whatever the job, we can shine our light.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it might be somebody who's in a corporate job, where, one might not necessarily think of that, whatever the mission of the company is, as being kind of spiritually oriented or to make the world a better place. But I see a lot of people who almost like hold space and are healers within the workplace for people who are around them, the people that, like everybody goes to, not the HR person necessarily, but everybody goes to this person for support or, grounding or that kind of thing. So yeah, the daily kind of presence around kind of what we're meant to do and shining that light is so important, I think.
Yes. And I've seen that. My background is that I worked for 14 years with the federal government. And I've seen that, and the importance of having those people being the best that they can be, and just being so happy being at work, because we do need policymakers. We do need people who think of the highest good and all the different policies and politics and the programs that are offered to the public. So becoming a light worker doesn't mean quit your job now and start just meditating every day. We need people also in corporate world.
Yeah, no, that's a great example. Yep, I'd agree with that.
Good. So let's together help all of those light workers in corporate world to shine their light a little bit better. There's a book that you wrote that I know can help. It's called Go Forward Fearlessly, a spiritual roadmap for how to be happy, stress-free, and confident despite massive change. Long title and subtitle, but it's a really good book and has a lot of information in there and a lot of self-care. So tell us a little bit about how that book came about.
Yeah, so this, and I actually have a kind of a copy of it here.
Nice.
So the way that book came about is that I was working kind of in a corporate environment until about 8 years ago, when I really crashed and burned, health-wise. I'm like a really healthy, high-energy person, and my work environment just was totally out of tune with my personal core values. And so when I was leaving for work in the beginning of the day, like I was one of those 80%, right? So I would leave for work and feel like I was leaving the real me at home. And eventually, it just, I tried to make it work in a lot of different ways. It just wasn't working. And so what I ended up doing was actually getting really sick. I got really depressed, and so depressed that I could only work half time for a while. And then I eventually had to quit my job because I got so sick. And so, so basically each chapter in this book is a workshop that I've given that is about the steps that I took to navigate from like really kind of ground zero, energy-wise, health-wise, and how I was able to find my life purpose, how I was able to navigate a major life transition like that. Like it was health, it was money, it was career, it was like a whole bunch of transitions all at once. And then how to land on the other side, being healthy and happy and financially secure, and that whole piece.
Wonderful. I love that. And thank you so much for sharing that, because I see a lot of clients who are there in that kind of bottom pit, so depressed. I went through that dark night of the soul as well before I quit the federal government. And my wish is that other light workers don't have to go to that deep black hole before finding their happy place again. So if they can learn from us, that would be just wonderful, and make little changes so they don't have to wait to be depressed. And it's a dark place. It's a really, really dark place. We learn a lot, but
oh yeah, and what's really the benefit is that, I mean, of course it's a difficult situation, but a lot of us, like the work I do right now is showing other people who are, maybe they're not in crash and burn mode yet, but they're really struggling at work. So now I can tell them the steps I took to find my life purpose. And then if they want to start a business, I can tell them the steps I took to create a business. So I basically, and I find that with a lot of people, in fact, many of the people who are watching this video, there's something in your life that's been a real challenge. It could be a health challenge, a financial challenge, a career challenge. A loved one could be, going through a divorce, single parenthood, whatever it looks like. Most people actually have a PhD in life experience that they can turn around and basically turn into a career and help other people navigate the same thing.
Yes. Yes. I love that. And especially as women, and as we build our community of women, a community of healers, we need to be able to use this life experience and raise each other up with that. Because one thing that I found from my experience, and when I talk to a lot of other women, is that when we go through these periods, we feel all alone. Like, this is only happening to me. Nobody else is going through that. And it's not true. We're a community of women suffering alone in a way.
Yeah,
so we need to
that's very true. And so then, it's the reaching out to somebody who's been there before, who knows, I can't tell you how many people I've had sitting in my office going through what I was going through 8 years ago, and really in tears, like just really struggling and hurting. And it's just, I can't go poof and change things overnight, right? They can definitely leave my office feeling a whole lot better with some tangible things to do. But just to talk to somebody who's had that pain, who's been through what they're going through, and who is on the other side of it, just is healing in itself.
Yes. Yeah. So if we can, through our businesses, create what we used to have before in our societies, which was either the community well or the side of the river, women would gather and talk about everything that was going on in their lives, and that was healing. And I think that's one thing that we can create through our businesses, is that place of women coming together and just talking. And through the talking, we heal.
I love that image. Yeah, I love that image.
Yeah. And that's kind of the thought behind the name of my business, which is Way to the Well.
Oh, okay, that's right. That's right. I love that. No, I love that image. Yeah. And kind of in a more, I don't know, this is kind of more of a modern term, but there's this idea of, social capital, the relationships that make up communities, that make up, our, provinces, our states, local, and kind of beyond that. It's those relationships and those social structures that really create a strong community, and that sense of connectedness, so that when you are going through things that are challenging, you're not doing it alone. You've got somebody else there that you can lean on.
Yes, wonderful. Are you noticing that the way to do business is also changing?
Yeah, there's more emphasis on collaboration, for sure. I do notice it. I don't know whether it's a reflection of me and how because I remember I've always kind of been a really open-hearted and a collaborator. I remember when my children were really young, the first business I had was designing children's clothing. And I would go down to New York City like once or twice a year to these trade shows where, we'd sell our line of clothings to these different stores. And even then, I was just like really open-hearted and collaborative and very trusting, which was really out of tune with that industry, really like out of tune in that way. So maybe the industry has changed some. But yeah, I like to think that, and I know my community in Burlington, Vermont, everybody's very collaborative. So I'll trust you that you're seeing more of that. I don't know whether it's more a reflection of kind of what I'm drawing to me and the communities I choose to belong to, but yeah, I do feel that positive movement and the whole Lightworker effect, right? About, we have this mission, and like we were saying, we don't have to do it alone, and we can have that collaborative, supportive environment and each play our particular role.
Yep. I like how you said that it's about your choices and the communities you choose to belong to, because that's one thing that I want women to remember, is that we are at choice. And you can choose a traditional business model, or you can choose a more collaborative model as well. And usually the more collaborative model works best for most women. Mm-hmm. Some women have more like Athena archetypes or different types of archetypes that are more head or intellectual oriented, but for most women, the collaboration is best. And so to not follow blueprints that overpromise, underdeliver, or that are putting the me first, because most women, and especially light workers, do not feel comfortable with putting ourselves up first. It's about serving, service. Mm-hmm. And most of the light workers, that's what it's about.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, and I don't know whether, I know there are, there are certain traditional business environments where when women are seen, even if they're coming from a place of service, if they feel so strong about their mission and they are seen as ambitious or seen as successful, in the traditional business model, there's this tearing down thing that can happen, which I think is coming from the zero-sum kind of framework, and there's not enough for everybody. And instead of everybody kind of being grounded in their own power and knowing why they're here and what they're meant to serve, and realizing, that power is basically shared. It's not just, limited. So I think kind of the light work, the spiritually oriented business owner, is more about collaboration and women supporting each other. And boy, we have so much to offer the world, right? Like really world. And so to collaborate instead of tearing each other down, is what we're meant to do, right? We're meant to be compadres, not kind of enemies.
Yes. Yep. And that's one thing that really impressed me about you. Because when you reached out, it was not, hey, I have this program, and you weren't salesy at all. Said, how can we work together? Because we were in the same book, right? The 365, what is it again? It's Life Shifts, this one.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just reached out and said, how could we work together? I'd like to know more about you and share a little bit about me and see what we can do together. And so that this video is one of the things that we decided to do together. But is that reaching out and helping each other, building each other up. And that really struck a good chord with me.
Yeah, it's the framework of how can I support you, right? Like, what do you have? What are you working on right now? And I have a background in community economic development, which is about, it's like having an MBA, but with the community added. And I just really love to support other businesses. So yeah, there's lots of great ways to do that.
Yes. So great. So let's jump into a little bit, because we're talking about light workers, spiritual minded entrepreneurs. So let's go a little bit now into what is a light worker, what's a crystal person, what's an indigo, because those are terms that we hear a lot.
Yeah.
But they're not necessarily defined very well.
Yeah. And so let's see, light workers is kind of the broader term, right? It's kind of the big umbrella. Crystals and indigos, I would say, is under there with a certain kind of mission that they're meant to fulfill. The way I don't know what the technical, if you looked it up on the internet, I don't know what the definition would be of light worker. The way I think of a light worker, obviously it's a light bringer, right? Someone who brings the light, somebody who's meant to be here at whatever time that they're kind of on the planet, making the world a better place, and who's spiritually oriented. That's how I think of a light worker. And then more specifically, the crystals and indigos. So the crystals and indigos have also a really important life purpose. And of course, everybody's life purpose is really important. Those of us, like you're offering this video series, right, in this show that you have, right? So you have the capacity, Jazz, for helping a whole lot of people, right? And I think of that as kind of it's a bigger life purpose in terms of the impact it can have on the world. Mm-hmm. And so in terms of the crystals and indigos and a definition for them, so back in during World War II, this is the thinking, that back in World War II, when there were such atrocities happening in the world, there was kind of this collective desire by humanity just for something so different, right? For light, right? For something very different to come in. And so in response, there have always been crystals and indigos, who are they're light workers. There always have been crystals and indigos in the world, but because of all the darkness that was happening during World War II and that collective call from humanity, a much larger number of crystals and indigos have basically come in since then. And so I'll tell you a little bit about the mission of the crystals and indigos. The indigos, just in terms of just kind of sequentially, or the indigos kind of come in first, and they are those really strong-willed warriors who have like a total BS detector, who aren't afraid of conflict. They really struggle in work situations because, and I consider myself an indigo. I would get myself in so much trouble. I mean, and I wouldn't do it on purpose, obviously. I was a hard worker, but I was a truth teller. That's what an indigo is. And if you're in a work environment, most work environments, at least that I have been in, bosses don't particularly appreciate the truth teller. Like, I would be able to tell my boss, look, if we continue down this road, then this is going to have a negative impact on the mission of our organization. And sure enough, I mean, it would happen. And so, but I remember one of my bosses in particular, just really didn't appreciate that very much, So it's the truth teller, and it's the warrior. And so the collective mission of the indigos is to basically come in, and larger numbers again, right? So basically come in to dismantle the structures in society that are no longer working. So if you think about the Arab Spring, that started in Tunisia, and how all those, and you think about a lot of young people, right? Like 20-year-olds, maybe even teenagers, were basically risking their lives. So you just think about this warrior energy, right? Because the monarchy, you know, the way government worked was not okay, like was not working for people. So then that's kind of started the Arab Spring. In the United States, you know, we had Occupy Wall Street about 7-8 years ago. And those were, again, a bunch of indigos who were like, the financial system in this country isn't working. And so, and then even more recently, for specific examples like Bernie Sanders, I'm sure is an indigo because he doesn't care what people think. Mm-hmm. He's got the same message. He's had the same message for 20 years, and he's all about dismantling the structures that aren't fair to people. And then Barack Obama, I would say, is another person, our president here in the US, more recently. So those are the indigos. They're the ones who basically dismantle the structures. They have that really high energy. A lot of them grew up, you know, with being given drugs to kind of keep the energy down. But really they're, you know, think about all the energy that's required in order to fulfill that mission, right? So that's the indigos. And then the crystals kind of come in afterwards, kind of from an evolutionary point of view. The crystals come in, and so the dismantling is kind of, the indigos are working on that. Then the crystals come in, and they come in basically to peacefully recreate and collaborate with others to create structures in society that work much more fairly. So that's their mission. So does that kind of answer your question about definitions?
I had not made the link with like the World War II. So that is nice. And what you said about going to your boss and saying, well, if you continue down this road, this is likely going to happen and it's not beneficial. That kind of made me chuckle because I did that more than once too and got a lot of flack for that.
Oh, yeah.
The boss was telling me, you don't have any proof. Where's your proof?
Exactly.
I know it. Like, can't you see? To me, it was like super obvious.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And it might take 3 years to come to a head. And then I couldn't say, I told you so.
Right. It's too long. Yeah. Well, and crystals and indigos are also very, very bright, and they can see things that other people can't see. So you can imagine if you have a boss who's not, you know, totally confident or who's more traditional, right? Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I actually remember when I was in financial services as a broker, which is the job where I crashed and burned. There was some kind of a new product coming out, and I was given the job of briefing the staff about this new product that was coming out. And my boss had asked me to do it, and he came in partway through the presentation, and he basically, because he wanted people to make a lot of sales, there was some aspect of the product that he said that he taught people about, you know, during this presentation that just wasn't true. Mm. And I had studied it really well because I wanted to make sure I knew my stuff. And I did it in a very polite way. And I just basically said, well, Mitch, actually, it's more this. And he just was like really pissed off. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of thing. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it's not out of like being confrontational. It's just about, well, what's the right thing to do here? Right? Like, yeah. Yeah.
So I think a lot of people can relate to that. And it's uncomfortable, right? Because when it's obvious for us, or when we really think of the highest good, and then we are in a corporation, any type of employment where they don't look for the highest good, where it's just about either the money or the bottom line or having the goals and the checklist, it does not feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. It feels out of place.
Right.
So that's why we need some self-care tips for that, right? And you offer?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I would say anybody who, you know, kind of is in that situation where they feel like what they're being asked to do there, because that's the thing about light workers and crystals and indigos. We have to be doing work that's in integrity with our personal values, right? We can't, there's like, so then, you know, if there isn't, you know, there are health issues, right? Like what happened to me, really common. And so the first thing I would say around self-care, if anybody kind of recognizes themselves in these stories that you and I are telling, that they get that handled. If they're having any health issues, to go see the therapist or the doctor or whatever and really get that handled. That would be the first thing. And then on my
stigma, we need to release a stigma about getting medical help, getting psychological help, going to a therapist. Most of them, there are different types of therapists, and there are also coaches like you and I who can work on these things. But yes, do get help.
Yeah, for sure. And actually that's a good point. I had a client a few years ago who he was an attorney. He worked for the state of Vermont, and he was really struggling at work, like very much kind of matched that description that you and I were just talking about. And I knew he was depressed, and and I just said, look, I'm not a therapist. It's totally up to you, but you probably have a program at work where you can look at some resources around getting some, help through employees, through an employee program, through your benefits package. So I just made it really clear that, I wasn't a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
But Jazz, I'm sure this happens with you too. Like a lot of, I don't call myself a therapist, certainly, because I don't have the credentials, but I know that when I help people through these transitions and we do coaching together, that there's healing that happens.
Yes.
Right. And so I noticed he didn't end up going to a therapist. Mm-hmm. And so I would meet with him once every couple of weeks, probably for a few months. And he pulled out of his depression, and he hadn't changed anything at work. Okay. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, there's somebody that can be a coach or a healer, right? Like you or I could be. That might kind of fit that requirement as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of good social workers that do that job legally, and I think it's similar in the States that it is in Canada. We're not therapists, we're not lawyers, we do that spiritual coaching, and right. So it's important to realize ethically, we need to realize those boundaries. And as an individual seeking help, it's good to have as many people on your team as possible. So that's a gym person, a trainer, your mindset coach, business coach, realignment. What I learned through my own story of depression and being so unhappy with work is that a lot of the depression and anxiety happen when you are misaligned. Because there's a lot of repressed emotions, repressed anger. And when you kind of open the door into that misalignment and start realigning yourself, then a lot of the symptoms can tend to disappear.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. And then depression, of course, I mean, the literal, I think, meaning of depression is depressing your feelings, depressing your gifts, depressing your talents, right? So that's like a real, yeah, for sure.
And put that in context with the Indigos, who are the truth tellers. If you're not standing in your own truth, everything collapses.
Yeah, that was definitely my story. So in terms of self-care, and this is so true of the Lightworkers, and especially the crystals and indigos, they're highly sensitive. Like if you think about this person who is really bright, often is multi-talented, highly sensitive, highly gifted, like this, I kind of like, I have this really tingling going through my body as I talk about this, but like just the power, right, that person has, the healing that can happen, and the gifts and talents to make that person, make that world a better place, right? So it's almost, I guess, if like, it would be like a thoroughbred, right? Like really the self-care is really important because there's so much power and so much potential within that being, right? And so that's why, and actually that's why the whole first chapter of my book is all about self-care. So often crystals and indigos, and I think Lightworkers probably too, especially if they're in a work situation that's not supporting them in who they are, but also just in general, it's really, this world can be a really harsh place, right? Mm-hmm. And so the self-care, I think, is the difference between being able to get out there and do the work you're meant to do in the world, right? There's this harshness, that's why we're here, but then how do we manage the sensitivity? So, and from my perspective, it's the self-care that makes that possible. So it's the really, really basic, like it's not rocket science, right? Stuff that we've all heard, like, getting enough sleep, drinking plenty of pure water. That's really important because, that huge mission, the work that we're meant to do, when our brains are working harder, we actually need more water in order for our brains to work, properly and to make good decisions. And, obviously eating well, crystals and indigos and lightworkers are especially susceptible to, pesticides, anything that just isn't natural food, really makes a huge, huge difference. They'll hear their guidance much more clearly. They'll just feel better. They'll have higher energy. They'll be able to navigate, kind of the ups and downs of daily life, either out there in the world or in their own personal lives. I think I mentioned sleep, right? Getting enough sleep, getting outside every day, especially for indigos and crystals, that sensitivity, and they pull in all those sometimes negative feelings going on around them or what other people are going through, that empathic kind of sense. So getting outside and just being able to kind of get physically active and also get that fresh air is really important. Mm-hmm. And so those are the big ones. Meditation is really important, or some kind of spiritual practice. So those are the basic things that I recommend to everybody, and they can make such a huge difference.
They do. And I really want to stress the physical well-being as well, going outside in nature, taking walks, keeping your body active, because when we are sensitive and we can think of that a little bit maybe as being like a ball of lint. And then we have static energy. And the static energy, we just attract more of those lint pieces that do not belong to us. Mm-hmm. When we are outside in nature, when we keep our body active, then we are more grounded. Because of the body, to me, is like a battery, right? We produce a lot of electricity. That's why we can have encephalograms. I can't pronounce it. All those EKGs that we have is because our body is electric. So when we do physical work, it makes sure that our battery operates properly and we have less static. And so we can operate better in the world. So
that's true. Yep. That's totally true. Yeah.
And typically when we feel depressed, that's when we don't want to do the physical activity, but that's when we really need to. So again, working with a coach, someone who can say, did you go outside for a walk today? Having a buddy, an exercise buddy, so important. Yeah. And I actually, when I think about it, because I tend to be pretty athletic anyway, but when I was really depressed, I think I was running and swimming every day during that whole period. Like I'd go for a run outside and then I'd go for a swim, and then it just kind of reset me. That's good. Because in my depression, I spent most of the time wanting to be in a ball on the floor. Don't look at me, don't touch me, don't be near me. And that was not very helpful. So I got a puppy.
Yeah.
So that walks, because if I wouldn't do it for me, at least I would do it for my puppy.
Yeah. No, that's a great, and like puppies are really heart opening too, right?
Yes, they are.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are helpers. Are there any other tips that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, for those, we're all pretty spiritually oriented, I think, who are kind of participating in this call. There's Archangel Michael is actually the archangel who is here to basically dispel the effects of fear and enable us to do the work that we're meant to do, and kind of take that fear away. There's a bunch of exercises in the first chapter of my book that talk about how to actually work with Archangel Michael. But just as kind of a quick takeaway, Archangel Michael, if you just call upon him, he can be with everybody all at once. There's no physical, limitations. So it's not like he can only be with you and you're keeping him from somebody else. But, just checking in and asking about how can I fulfill my life purpose? Please help me dispel fears around this, because when you're moving towards your life purpose, a lot of fear often comes up. And he's really meant to support people in doing the work they're meant to do. That's his big mission. And then the other thing, actually, I noticed just before we were getting started, you have all these oracle cards on your shelf right behind you. Yeah. So the oracle cards, I actually started in tarot too. I think you've got some tarots in there too. Oracle cards really helped me when so if you think about this, I was a broker in financial services, right? Very traditional environment. And I started using oracle cards when I was really depressed in this job. And boy, they really helped me. I kept getting one card, the dog, kept coming up. And that was about, being part of a team, being loyal. And basically the message was, you're in an environment where you're being loyal, but your teammates are not being loyal. So anyway, so oracle cards can be a great way. I mean, I love when each of us can find whatever works for us to bring us our own inner peace, and then make that direct connection to whoever you believe in, whether it's the divine or angels or God or whoever it is, to be able to make that direct connection to get those messages and that feedback. And I think oracle cards are a great way to do that. Really, really effective.
They are. And they are a gateway. They're a portal to your imagination, to your higher consciousness. And one thing that I want to mention about oracle cards, I want to dispel one of the myths around them.
Oh.
You're not allowed to purchase your own oracle card. Okay, that is BS. Truth telling.
Oh, that's interesting. I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, some people say you're not allowed to purchase your own, and then when you have it, you have to put it under your pillow and sleep with it for a bit. And there's like so much stuff and rules around getting your oracle cards, and it kind of stops people from having one because then they're afraid. And so, yeah, BS on that. Just go to any store, go online, browse them. And if one really calls to you because you love the images, you love the energy, then this is one for you. And one thing to remember is that any tools, whether it's a pendulum, a crystal, oracle cards, tarot, they are not the magic tool. You as an individual are the channel. You are the oracle. Everything else is a tool to help you understand the messages that your higher self is trying to show you.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, and that's so true. So it's like, because the power, sometimes we can give our power away, right, to an oracle, to a tarot card or an oracle card, right? And it's about, for sure. And the one deck that I would recommend, since we're kind of talking about this whole idea about the mission of the Lightworkers and the crystals and indigos, is there's a deck that's called the Life Purpose Oracle Card deck. And it's, you may have it because you've got a lot of Doreen Virtue's decks right there behind you.
I don't have that one though.
You don't have that one. Yeah. That's, I mean, even if you know what your life purpose is, it can be really, really helpful for sure. I use it every day. Yeah. So I would definitely, recommend that deck. It's just, they're all really accurate.
They are. And they are as accurate as you allow them to be, because again, you're the oracle. And one thing to do when we consult the oracle or our higher self is we need to be detached from the message in a way, because it's not always what you want to hear. It's what you need to hear.
Right. Right.
Some people say, my pendulum isn't working. The cards aren't working. Oh, they are working.
I know.
Sometimes you don't want to be open to the message.
Right. It's that feeling of security that we want.
Yes.
Yeah.
And magic is not about security. When magic happens, it's about the willingness to play with life, the willingness to go on an adventure and to explore different facets of our soul. That's what magic is. It's not about voodoo stuff and spells and cauldrons. It's about being willing to play with life.
Yeah. No, I love the way you just described that. Yeah, very beautiful.
Good. All right. So we talked, I think we covered everything. We talked about you, we talked about indigos and the crystals, and that just validated so much about my own journey. So thank you for that. Because I didn't really identify myself as an indigo before, but now with the stories, like, oh yeah, okay, I'm an indigo.
Yeah.
We talked about self-care, the different things you can do, from enough sleep, enough water, and enough water would be what, about 1 liter, 2 liters of water a day. And electrolytes also I want to add, because we are an electrical being and we need enough electrolytes so that energy circulates properly through our bodies. We talked a little bit about your book as well. And let's just take this moment, though, to say that this book is available online. You showed us a hard copy, but there's also an ebook available.
Yeah, so this is the hard copy book. It's pretty short. It's about 100 pages, really fast to consume. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, but you can actually download it at my website, which is ihelppeoplelovemondays.com. And you can actually download the book there. And then also, along with that, you'll see there will be a link to my calendar, because, you know, if people are kind of going through a major life transition, but they're not quite sure where to start or where to start in the book or whatever resources, you know, might be able to support them. You know, we just talked about that whole thing about not being alone. And so there's a link to my calendar for a Go Forward Fearlessly complimentary breakthrough session, where I can, you know, just get on the phone with people or Skype or on Zoom and, you know, tell them where to start in the book and see if there are some other resources that I can share with them as well.
Good. Wonderful. And that would be just a great spot if someone does not know where to start in the journey. Just talk to us and reach out.
Yeah.
I'll make sure to have the link there so that people can easily access your information to book a session with you. Great. So I think this wraps up this conversation. Thank you so much for your time today, for this just wonderful energy, beautiful information. I'm sure, and I do hope and trust that it is helping a lot of people out there who might not be comfortable in their jobs and their purpose, and so they can love not only Mondays, but every day of the week.
Right, exactly. Well, thanks for having me. Really fun.
It was fun.